In this episode, we look towards the interconnectedness of life. We delve into the idea that true happiness is not achieved by catering to the demands of the ego, and how our perceived separation can often lead us away from seeing our intimate connection with all things. We shed light on the illusory nature of who we think we are and guide our attention towards the infinite self and oneness that permeates through all aspects of existence. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you here. Hello, Gem.
Hello. Hello, everyone. How are you? Yeah, really good. I liked that intro.
Just made a little change.
Well, we can do that every week, you know. We'll just swap it for the Unminding soundtrack at the beginning. But yeah, it's really cool. Good shout.
Darling. Good.
But it's not a sign that you want me to live with you.
Oh, of course I do.
I said this earlier. I won't be the first and the last woman to say that, you know, you are the perfect man for me. If you were in male form, I would ask you to marry me, probably.
Oh, thank you, darling. And if I was a male, I certainly would marry you.
Oh, thank you. Maybe next life.
Yeah,
then.
next time round, we'll be opposite sex and we'll get married.
Okay, cool. Deal.
Yeah. So how you doing? Is everything good?
Yeah, everything's great. Really good. Well, the only thing that's not is I can't find my headphones. And for the first week ever, I don't give a shit.
Oh, yes, at last.
Yeah, I'm just used to using headphones. But yeah, there we go.
You sound great, darling. Doesn't make any difference. I never use headphones, so it's absolutely fine. How you feeling about tonight's subject?
Yeah, good. I mean, over Christmas, I wasn't feeling particularly one with anything. And now it's like, wow, it's completely flipped on its head. Really looking forward to tonight. If anyone has any questions as normal, you can message me and I'm happy to read them out later. Really looking forward to the conversations that are going to happen. I've been immersing myself in the 3 principles again over the last the last week, I suppose. So yeah, feeling excited and yeah, looking forward to all of the content we're going to make. Excited for it.
Good, darling. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Like Gem had a bit of a rough time over Christmas, and it's like when we're in that space, we often don't listen to what we need to hear. And then as we start to come out of it, we begin to be like, okay, yeah, of course it's all still there. Of course this is all true. Of course this is the direction I need to look in. But when the ego gets hold, it can be, it can be quite tricky to find your way out of it, because actually it's not you that's doing it. It's just some new thinking's going to come through and for it to look a bit different. So as usual with our calls, we'd like you to leave everything that you think at the door, all your problems, anything that's weighing you down, anything that seems a bit heavy. If you can park it and just listen to us over the next hour, that would be wonderful, because you really don't need to bring it into this conversation. We're going to have a conversation that really looks to something deeper than the outside world, than our problems, the people in it, the events, the things we need to do, the bills we need to pay. We're going to a space where we always know everything's okay and that we have what we need inside us to solve any problems and to deal with any situation. Again, if you're new to this, the mind can often resist and say, well, how can this work? How can a conversation around illusion create a difference in my life? How can a conversation around the energy that created life make a difference to my life? And all we can say to that is stick around, because we know it has changed our lives. We know that it's changed other people's lives. We are evidence of that. We get messages from many people from the podcast that say they've been listening and that they're really starting to see changes. I have it with my clients. So it's just listening and remembering. We're so caught up in doing. It's really nice to have even just an hour a week of being. Everybody, it's like we're on this hamster wheel of do, and we forget to look inside. And it really is, there's so much there. There's so much inside of us that when we begin to see it, it's like we do tend to maybe make a little bit more time for it. As Gem says, she's been immersing herself in it over the last week or two again. And she's been around it for a few years. I'll go through times where I really throw myself into it, even though I teach it, because I know that I feel a bit stuck. So there's just something that I need to see, something that needs to be revealed, or just some old thinking that needs to be challenged. So that's what we're always looking at. Now, the conversation is going to be quite a deep one tonight. We're in the deep end of the pool because we're talking about oneness. Now, oneness really is where everything points to when you look at spiritual teachings. Whatever you're looking at within a spiritual teaching is going to point to this true nature, and religion, actually. If you could look to the depths of religion and really what the core message is, it will point to this. It's just it's been covered up with lots of dogma. Wherever you are, whatever religion you are, whatever you look towards, that's absolutely great. That's the direction that you're meant to be going in. But we just want to touch the essence of that. And what we said was in the blurb, I believe we talked about symbiosis. And really, like in the world of form, a symbiotic relationship is an interaction. It's two species or two things that come together and they benefit each other. So this relationship, I think it originates from a Greek word, and I did look it up earlier. I'm pretty sure it's living together. Jen might want to check that because I didn't write that down. So if you think about a clownfish and an enemy, so we've all seen Finding Nemo probably, and there's that relationship there. So in the physical world of form, we can actually see this symbiosis. We can see it playing out. And we look at it and we think, oh yeah, that makes sense, But if you look at nature, everything is in perfect order. And when we sit and we look at that, it's kind of miraculous. But we never really take much time to do that. Again, this is why this conversation is important. This is why taking the time to do that is important, because at the true depth of when we're talking about oneness, when we're talking about the energy of life, there is only symbiosis. There is only oneness. There is only interconnectedness. There is only, all of us are so energetically dependent on each other that we've just forgotten, and we've become so enamored with division and separation. We're lost in a world today where everyone is screaming, respect my differences, but ignoring that we're all the same. And actually, the sameness is where we really get to love each other, where we will respect each other's differences from, where there isn't a fight. That's why the song at the beginning was, Why Can't We Live Together? It just felt so appropriate that when we touch this space, when we see before our thinking and our separation, there's so much there. Actually, everything's there, but there's so much love there. There's so much compassion there. There's so much warmth there. It's coming from a place of, oh, well, you really are the same as me. If we stop screaming at each other and fighting each other and trying to bring each other down and focused on that, it's like, holy shit, it'd be amazing. The world would just be such a beautiful place. I guess that's not what we're meant to have in the world right now, because in many ways we can see so much division and so much separation. But I also see so much awakening in the world. I see so much love in the world. I see people are now beginning to see that the old divide and conquer is played out on every level within humanity, because we're told that we have to fight because of these differences. And actually, we don't. We can love the differences. That's the difference, where we turn it on its head. And I shared a video, I think earlier in this week. I will share it again today. And it's so beautiful. And it actually talks about that. It talks about how we need to come together. I think it's Plandemic 3 is the title. But he just talks about everything that's gone on in the world over the last few years. All the divisions that are seen in the world, all the ways we're told to not like each other and take each other down, and actually to go through that, go beyond that, see something more, see something deeper. So I think that's why this conversation is so important. And I say it every week, it's not just that it's a beautiful conversation. It's not just that it's a profound conversation. It's a deeply practical conversation. Because as you see it, you will show up in the world in a different way. You will be kinder to your neighbour. And really that's what this is all about. When we see we are one, we can only be loving and we can only be kind. Do I fall short of that sometimes? Absolutely. But do I remember it also? Absolutely. Do I think it's one of the most important things we can share right now? Absolutely. So what is oneness? What does it mean? Who are we? It's so hard to find the words to talk about it because we're talking about what came before words, and the words can be quite clunky. So what does it mean? If you're looking at the three principles, it's those energies that create life. It's the invisible energy of mind, the invisible energy of thought, the invisible energy of consciousness. If you're looking at a non-dual teaching, you'll just look at the energy of consciousness that creates everything. It's who we are. It's not your personality or your character. That came from it. What the character does, it's there to give us the illusion of separation. But at some point in our life, we'll get the call to come home and remember that we are not the separation. And we'll see it in quite a compassionate, loving way. You know, I don't look at my separate self and my ego and beat myself up that I believe I'm separate. Of course I'm going to. You know, the idea of the self needs to be there for us to experience the separation and going away from oneness, to believe in who we are, to have the experience of being human. All that happens is when we explore something like this and we wake up, is that idea of our humanness becomes just that. So we get to still live in that way. We still see that we're human, but we understand there's more of a depth to it. There's something more to uncover. So the separation is supposed to be there. The self is the starting point of that separation, the me, the I, the doer, all those things that we identify with, that we can see are transient. When we observe it, we can go, of course that's transient. You know, I've changed over the course of my life. I'm sure you have too. And we'll know that we were born and we'll die. And there's this bit in between where we think we're this separation with all these characteristics and this personality and these idiosyncrasies. And there's a perfection in that, but it's not truth. It's not permanent. It's not infinite. It's creation and destruction at play. So in these conversations, that's what we look through. So I suppose a good play with what we're talking about here is the fact that you can observe yourself. You can observe being a Holly, being a Chris, being an Artorius, being an Agato, being a Witty. We can all have a sense that, oh, actually, yeah, I can see my thinking. I can see a separate self. And it's in the exploration of that really we can begin to see that, oh yeah, maybe this idea of being a separation isn't quite what it seems. Because if I really were just this separation, how would I be able to observe it? How would I be able to feel moments of deep connectedness to other people, to places, to moments? That connection that you feel didn't come from outside of you, didn't come from the person you were with. It came from falling out of the idea of your separation and becoming more at one. And in that space, we look at another, we look at a situation, we're in a moment, and it's like, wow, I feel so connected. And we'll get that with different people in different ways. We'll automatically feel quite deeply connected to some people and less to others. That's okay. You know, that's probably coming because we have thinking and conditioning that covers up the oneness, that covers up the infinite self, the true self. So we're always going to obviously have that human experience kind of filtering it through to some degree. But we've all had it. We may have pinned it on a sunset or a relationship, but it's always been us. It's always come from us. So that witness can really begin to show us that there's something more to this experience of being human. That witness is the place where we can touch the divine, that we see that it was a formlessness from which all form was created. I've got a beautiful friend called Paul, and he's a non-duality teacher. And he just says, not two, only one. When you're in duality, you're in opposites, you're in complexity, you're in all the things that the mind creates. When you're in oneness, you're just home. There is just this isness. There is just this. There isn't an opposite to it. There is just this. So then it's really helpful to understand this, because we can catch ourselves when we're lost in that complexity, when we're very, very caught up. We go, oh, I can't be seeing truth here because I'm having like a battle in my mind. I'm having a ping pong match in my mind of thought trying to cure thought on top of thought. And I'm really not getting anywhere. If anything, I'm getting more and more lost. So this conversation is about us coming home. It's about us catching that and seeing that and coming home to something deeper. Seeing that this illusion of duality is so complex, and this oneness we can point back to is so simple. It really is so simple. I mean, in many ways, for me, it's like I see things so simply a lot of the time now. Complexity, just I'm like, whoa, I can't go there. If it gets too complex for my mind, I've just got into a place in, I suppose, my understanding where my mind doesn't really enjoy it, especially if it's something to do with pointing towards this truth. I can listen to some teachers and to me, they're just complicating it too much. They'll be perfect for other people. But for me, there's just a bit too much complexity. There's just a bit too much mind, personal mind, intellect in the way of seeing. So what we're pointing to is that we're part of the whole. We're part of the universe. We're interconnected. There's this one unified field of infinite potential, and we are that. And not only that, we're conscious of the experience. We're conscious of being this human, of having this body. You know, think of symbiosis. Think of your body. Think of the interconnectedness and of how your body works. It's a miracle. We're so much more than what we think we are. I wrote this a little earlier. It just came through when I was kind of sitting thinking about today's talk. And it's, there are untrodden spaces within you. You are the road less travelled, the path and the way. What is inside, where we connect, where we are one, is all of it. The me, the you, the rock, the tree, the water and the wind. There is nothing other than this oneness appearing as separation. When this is seen from within, an awakening occurs. My friend Paul talks about this as the ocean. Everything is made from this ocean, and all we are is the wetness. Nothing is born and nothing dies. Everything arises from this space, the eternal, infinite, true nature of our being, deeply connected to all things at all times. And I think that's just it. For the mind to comprehend that there is nothing but us in our experience, there is nothing but us in this universe, it can't get it. But we know that there was nothing and now there's everything. We know that if this energy creates all things in this world in this moment, that energy means we're connected to everything. I mean, I had an insight once that my mind still doesn't understand, that not only was this connectedness linear, it went throughout time, backwards and forwards. It was just, this point is everything. But we have to be limited to have the experience of being us. So then we see that we're deeply connected and we can have this experience, and then we can forget about it and remember it, and then forget about it and remember it. But the fact that we start to understand it as much as we possibly can understand it, we can catch ourselves in the space of, where are we living from? Am I living from that? Or am I living from my ego? Am I seeing that? Or am I thinking that I need things in this world to be okay? The three principles are just such a beautiful way of pointing to that. because they just show us we're not who we think we are. But at the same time, everything that we are is what we think. You know, the duality and the paradox of being human, of seeing this. It's these glimpses of our true nature and that infinite ocean of oneness that allow us to see that everything is as it should be. It doesn't mean to say we don't go and do, we don't go and play, we don't want things, have things, play in this world of form. Of course we do. But what a beautiful foundation to begin to explore who you are. To begin to see that this separation isn't true, that risk of sounding corny, our brothers and sisters, we are one. It's so fulfilling. We get so filled up with love when we glimpse that. And from there, we want to help people. We want to do the right thing. We want to give blessings. We want to receive them too. We see that everything that we see in the world is already within us. We go play, we go interact with people. Of course, we still have our personalities and our wants and the people we like and the people we gravitate more towards, and we're always going to have that. But it doesn't mean to say we have to not love the people that aren't the same as us. So this giving and receiving infinite loop that we should really be in, rather than taking and greed, becomes evident. You know, it becomes, I can see that the energy of giving and receiving is one, back to oneness. There isn't a separation. So you can see with some people, they're really comfortable with giving and not receiving. Some people don't like either. Some people are really comfortable receiving but don't like to give. And they're not seeing the truth. They're not seeing what's true about being a human being, about having this experience. You know, it's just as important to be able to give as it is to receive. And it's never taking. You know, it's never taking what isn't yours. That, to me, isn't the good energy way to be. That's not I don't know. Yeah, maybe we can see in the world so many people take and it looks like they have everything. And we think these arseholes have got everything. And I'm a good person and I haven't. And it's like, don't worry about that. Forget about that shit. Like, let them take all they want. To me, that's just it's such going against our true nature. Now, I don't know what consequences there are of that. I don't know what their lessons are, what their life is about. But put that to one side and just be who you are. You know, be this love, be this wisdom, be this receiving, be this giving. You know, I know the world can look unjust, but that's just how it looks. You know, I've studied lots of different spiritual teachings, and again, many of them, it's like what we see, this world of form, is the tiniest fraction of truth, the tiniest fraction of what is energetically there. So if we're this 1% that we see, there's 99% unseen, unknown. We have no idea. So we can look and we can judge from our finite minds, but we don't know in the realm of the infinite what their game is, why they're like that, what the consequences of them being like that is going to be. So we're best not to think about that, not get caught up in that unjustness. And we can observe it, but it should allow us to do better. It should make us see that, wow, yeah, that isn't who I am. I've explored who I am and I don't want to show up in the world like that. Maybe I'll never have as much in the material world as they have, but I'll have this inner richness that no one can take away from me. You can see that taking energy, it's an insecurity. It's an insecure, ego-driven energy of more, more, more. I want what's theirs because I don't have enough. Well, we're coming from a place of having enough no matter what. Again, doesn't mean to say we don't play with having more. But we're in the giving receiving cycle, not in the taking. It's incredibly different. So the seeds that we plant in this giving and receiving cycle are the fruits that we gain. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to remember, is that what are we planting? You know, what are you planting? What are your seeds? What's coming from love? What's not that you can throw away, that you don't want to plant? What's coming from the truth of your being, of who you really are and what you really want? Not what the mind tells you want, but what you really want. What does that look like? What does that mean to you? Now, I'd hazard a guess for most of us, yeah, we play in the world of form. But the seeds we want to plant are the seeds of peace and happiness in our world. That's what we're all looking for. You know, we want stability and safety outside in the world, and we're not always going to get it. But if we plant those seeds within us, that we are peace, we are happiness, we are security, we're going to be able to cope with this crazy fucking world in the best way that we can, with as much grace as possible. Doesn't mean to say we don't fight. You know that many of you are my friends on Twitter, and if you're listening on the podcast, you know, I'm a believer in protesting. I'm a believer in that sometimes we have to create change. But I know that the more I work on my inner foundation to do that, the more peacefully I'll be able to do that. The more I'll be able to see the situation and respond in the most creative way possible, because I'm not caught up so much in the emotion of why I'm doing it. Don't get me wrong, you can still look at the world and the things that are happening in it and get pissed off. But when I come home, I'm like, well, what I can do about that is what I can do about that. Living from a place of peace and happiness is actually also fundamental to that. The more I can live in the world that's created from within me, of love, of peace, of joy, I don't always feel, but I know is there, the more I'm rebelling against how the world wants me to feel. The more I'm rebelling against the conditioning and the programming that the world says I need more, more, more. That the world says it, you know, it's all doom and gloom. You know, that if I were to put the news on, which I don't, that it's going to just feed me negative information. No, I'm not having that. You know, I get to see what I see that comes through me, and this understanding and this knowing who I am allows me much of the time to see that in the best way possible. Again, still human, still get lost, still get caught up. But knowing that when I fall out of my conceptual mind, when I fall into something deeper, when I see who I am before thought, I'm always okay. When I touch that space of beingness, that everything is as it should be, even this crazy world. So if I can see that as much as possible, I know I'm doing the best that I can. And even when I'm not seeing it, I'm still doing the best I can. I was listening to the last interview of Dr. Zelenko. It's an Israeli doctor, and really amazing man, kind of similar beliefs to me. I was protesting a lot over the last couple of years about things that are going on in the world. I think he passed last year, and in his last interview, he was saying that he had cancer and that it fundamentally changed his view of the world. And so that's interesting. And I was listening, and the interviewer said, "So what's different?" And he said, "I'm aware of my being." I was like, obviously my ears pricked up, and I was like, oh. He said, yeah, it's been such a gift to be. I didn't understand being before. Now I understand being. I understand the moment. I understand what's here for me. Whereas I didn't have the eyes to see that before. And it's like, wow. But we don't have to get sick to see it. It's here for all of us to see. It's the point of the Unminding project. It's wake up. Let's all look in this direction. Let's see what we can see. Let's go deeper and deeper. Let's find out more and more. Let's challenge this separation. Let's love more. Let's create the change that we want to see. Who said to be the change that you want to see in the world? Was it Martin Luther King? Anyway, that isn't just about action. I think when I hear that now, I'm like, oh, that's about being. Who are you being? We could all always be more love, without a doubt. Me, Gems, all of you, we can always be more love. So yeah, it's a very beautiful conversation, and one that I implore you don't try and get with your mind, but you hear with your heart. Gems.
There were so many amazing points in that. I'm going to struggle to go back to all of them, but the first thing is I love what you said about the planting the seeds. And I don't know whether it was another teacher say something similar to this the other day, but it's like we're all wanting to grow oranges, but we keep planting potatoes, then getting annoyed that we've got no oranges. But until we see that for what it is, it can be, really hard. We're all sort of going on autopilot. And yeah, one of the main questions that I had is, when you're born, we don't have this ego, we don't have this character. We sort of grow into it, if you like, whether that's through environmental factors or, we're not taught in school these lessons that we should be. So if animals and babies naturally have it, it's like not the meaning of life, but we then go into this seeing that we're separation and having struggles or whatever it may be, the hardships in life. And then we have to learn to undo it all, because that's kind of how it's looking.
Yeah. What's the question?
Is that we're supposed to go through the separation to learn that we are one. Otherwise, how would we have ever been able to see it?
Oh, absolutely. We're here to have the oneness vowed. It's not supposed to be seen. Well, it is supposed to be seen, but we're not. Okay, I studied Kabbalah for many years, and in that it was the light wanted to know itself, and the light couldn't know itself without containing a vessel for the light to go into, which created the separation. So we are the vessel. We are the separation of light. And many other teachings look at it the same way. And it's consciousness has to forget its consciousness to play the game of life, to remember that it's consciousness again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It seems so simple, yet when you try and work it out, it becomes complicated. And that is, I suppose, the trick of it, is how is the best way to move out of your intellectual mind so that you don't keep trying to understand it?
The absolute best way is to know that the intellectual mind is never going to get it, because it's like a knife trying to cut itself, the intellect trying to know oneness. The intellect is a product of oneness. It can't go back and understand that oneness is the creation. It's too much for it. I'm sure I've said this a lot on other spaces. It's, you may have done it when you were little. I still do it now. Is if I look up to the sky on a starry night and I think that goes on forever, that's infinite, my mind can't comprehend that. It's like a mind-melting thought. So these are also mind-melting thoughts. So as much as the mind, the intellect, the ego may want to try and work it out, it's not going to be able to, because it just doesn't have that capacity. The mind's great for trading, for maths problems, for building a wall. Our intellects are wonderful, but they're not the best when it comes for the deeper questions. It's no help when it comes to understanding the self.
So it's almost like, well, seeking the freedom and the happiness confirms that you're not it, which is going to push us further away. And even wanting or needing to be free is sort of saying that you're imprisoned, which doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's the illusion, again, of all the illusion. This Adyashanti quote, I mean, I've probably said it again before, but I love it. It's consciousness always yields itself back to the illusion. It always comes back to me, every illusion, because if it doesn't wake the illusion up, emptiness can't dance. And we are emptiness dancing. I did see Chef Jay come up, but he's gone, so...
Chef Jay, more than welcome to come up and ask any questions. And that quote just reminded me of the Rumi one, which is beautiful as well, is why struggle to open a door between us when the whole wall is an illusion?
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Beautiful. Hi, Chef Jay.
Hi, Chef Jay. How are you?
Excellent. Hey, Molls. Hey, Gem. I just wanted to share, I love what you're saying about, the mind and the intellect trying to understand the self. And it's not possible in the sense that the way I liken it, it's like trying to smell color or trying to taste the sound. It's emotions that can't fathom or comprehend. It's different senses, right? And it's not possible to do. And so it's coming from a different place and a different paradigm. And, so I think that's a really paradigm shifting perspective that you're opening up for a lot of people and for myself as well. Like that just kind of came to me because I'm very heady. I do try to logically explain things, and, you can't explain certain things with words and with logic. And so what popped into my mind, of all places, was like trying to smell a color. I don't know why that stuck with me. You just can't do that. And so it's just a segregation of senses almost. So that's what I wanted to throw in there.
Oh, I love it. And I'm stealing it. Thank you.
It's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you very much. And that's it. And isn't it wonderful when we can just relax into not knowing? As you said, you're a heady person, you're a thinker. A lot of us are. We've been programmed for the mind to be king. And when we can't work something out, we try harder to work it out. And actually what we should do is just step back. And I think something like this allows that. It allows us that space to step back and go, well, I don't know it. I don't know it all. And I don't know it all. I've got a tiny glimpse of something. And for some reason, I'm quite good at explaining it. And that's it. Because we're all the same. We're all made of the same thing. We're all this oneness taking form. And it's a great relief to me to not need to know, because very much before I kind of went on these explorations, I had quite a defensive ego that had to be right. And that's a bastard place to be. It's really, really tough to live like that and live from that place of having to be right. I can still get caught up in it, but it's exhausting. It really is. And when we see that, it's like, what are we scared of? It's okay to not know. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show yourself to people. Even on these spaces, we get to share. And, I think for me and Gem, we try and share in the most honest way that we can. We're not sitting here saying we've found something and we're perfect. We're saying we've found something, it's really helpful, and we're still really fucked up sometimes. And it's like, oh, okay, that's good. I can get down with that. And that's the beauty of this. That's the wonder. And that I love. I can't smell a colour. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but when you see things in different ways, when other people have their insights and explain it, it's really quite amazing. So thank you, Chef Jay. And you won't be stealing it, Molls, because if we're all one, then you created it in the first place, right?
Yeah, well, Chef Jay and I are one, so, it was mine anyway, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, this oneness definition, I think we could get away with a lot of things. I mean, if anyone else has got any other questions, then you're more than welcome to request or message me. But In the meantime, one thing that keeps coming up is who is doing the seeking? Who is the seeker? What is it?
Who is the seeker? So say that again, please, darling.
That's okay. Who is seeking? Who is the seeker that is wanting these things? If we are the one and we are wholeness, is it the ego? Is it what we're conditioned to be?
Okay, yeah, I got it. Right, the seeker is the separation looking to find what it already is because it feels insecure. Okay, that's just what came through. Once it is revealed to us that we are whole, there is nothing to seek. So seeking has to be the separation, believing it's not whole. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we don't still explore. So for us, we're exploring the inner worlds, but it's not because we want to be more whole. We already know that we're whole. It's that we want to have a richer experience of understanding that we are evolving, but we're not insecure in our doing of that. We are seeing who we are, and we're understanding, to as much as we can understand, that we're not this separation. And from there, seeking falls away.
So just to follow on, this makes complete sense in my head, and I hope it's going to come out correctly. So when you are totally in the moment, you are at one with everything. It's impossible to feel negative emotions. You can't feel those emotions because you're not on that frequency. So is that why when we do feel depressed, we do feel down, we do feel anxious, that is purely because we're experiencing the separation of not being at one? That's why we have those feelings.
Bingo.
I think I just had a breakthrough there.
Really?
Wow. It's how you're feeling is a direct correlation to how non-separated you are to who you are supposed to be.
Bingo. Absolutely. Love it. And it's so interesting because think about somebody that is incredibly depressed. They shut themselves off from the world. They go more into the separation. So actually understanding who you are and this exploration takes people out of depression, because we start to see that there's something more. Separation isn't real. This sadness, this loneliness, it's such a calling home. We've mistaken everything. All of these feelings are saying, come home. Like, remember who you are. But we get so lost in the separation, and the mind takes such hold when we're experiencing the separation and the depression and the sadness and the loneliness, that the grip stops us from seeing that. Now, hopefully, understanding what we're teaching here and grounding yourself in it, which is listening to these calls, listening to the podcast, listening to other teachers, doing private work with me or someone that does something like this, that's where your grounding comes in, that when we get lost, we tend to come home a little bit quicker than we used to. But all of those dark feelings aren't telling you who you are, they're telling you who you are not. It's such a cry for home.
Yeah, and I guess checking in with yourself is the only way to, as quickly as possible, realise what you're doing and how to not be doing it. Because I was not always struggling with that, but always trying to find a way of, when I fall into that, how can I, as quickly as possible, remember, hey, that's not how you're supposed to feel. There is another way. And doing things doesn't work, but just the simplicity of checking in with yourself when, you know, I know for sure that when I am in that state and when I'm in a down mode, I'm not asking myself, what do I need? What will not make me feel better? But it's like it's a complete separation, I sort of ignore myself in a way. So yeah, being conscious and present and checking in with yourself is maybe a shortcut to getting back to the oneness. But yeah, definitely I've heard something fantastic there. So
Good.
thank you so much.
Good. I want to challenge what you just said a little bit. And the reason I'm going to challenge it is because that would be the separation, thinking it can do something about when it gets lost. And my experience with my clients, my experience in the world that I've lived in teaching this has been that we can get a little bit caught up in this idea that the separation can do something to remember its oneness. It's the oneness remembering that it's not a separation. It's deeper than that. So you thinking that, oh, there's something I need to do to check in with myself when I'm feeling down. Well, you're not going to do that. You're feeling down. You're not going to see that. What will happen is fresh thought, insight, this remembering of who you are will suddenly have come through, not because of anything that you've done, just because it's ready to come through. And you'll suddenly go, oh, I'm checking in with myself. Oh, I'm not that. And you'll come out of whatever funky place you're in. There's a teacher that said to me once, it's like, when we need to hear this, we won't listen. And when we don't, we're always listening. It can be true. It's when we're not got the ears to hear it, we're not going to hear it. But the grounding of the conversation means that the more we're aware of we're not the separation, that we are this divine truth, this blissful energy behind life, that has more availability to come through because we're remembering it now. We've explored it. Whereas before we didn't really have a clue. We were kind of fumbling around in the dark, trying to find the light switch and having no idea where it is. It's a bit like the light switch is there, but it will come on its own.
That is obviously completely right. And I'm glad that you challenged that. And I'm surprised you didn't come back with, yeah, of course you're going to check in with yourself when you're feeling like shit. That is a great idea in the moment, but it's never going to happen. Isn't that just a great example of how the intellectual mind tries to prefix everything and think that it knows better?
Well, it's the you thinking it can do something again, isn't it? It's like the ego coming and go, yeah, well, if I do that when I feel like that, then I'll come out of it. If the separation could have a doing to come out of bad feeling, you'd have worked it out years ago and you'd be doing it all the time. There'd be no depression, there'd be no mental illness, there'd be nothing because, oh, yeah, I know what to do. The experience that's on the table is on the table. What we get to understand when we see this truth is that it will go, it will pass. And while we're in it, it's almost saying that I know this isn't true. I may be feeling like fucking shit, but I know that this isn't true. And I know that this will change. And that's about as good as it gets when we're in it, I think, is to know that there's something in it that isn't quite real, that isn't quite true. And at some point, the real truth of who we are will shine through and we will feel better. But the human experience is one of feeling like shit sometimes.
Well, that in itself is freeing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's changed over the last few years, but we have been brought up in a world where it wasn't okay to not be okay, especially for men. But now mental illness, wellness, whatever is being normalized and spoken about a lot more. But I think we have lived in a world for a long time where you have to appear a certain way, you should be happy. We live in a modern world, but actually it's really quite not like that sometimes.
Yeah. There's another teacher that said, it's not always easy, but it's simple. And I really like that. It's not always easy, but it's simple. And again, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing what we do.
Absolutely. And there's been some really interesting questions and insights tonight. We're nearing the hour, so if anybody wants to late night call a last minute request, you're more than welcome. There was a poem that I found earlier by Rumi, and it's called Say I Am You. And it says, I am dust particles in sunlight. I am the round sun. To the bits of dust I say stay. To the sun keep moving. I am morning mist and the breathing of evening. I am wind in the top of a grove and the surf on a cliff. Mast, rudder, helmsman and keel. I'm also the coral reef they are founder on. I am a tree with a trained parrot in its branches. Silence, thought and voice. The musical air coming through a flute. The spark of a stone, a flickering in metal. Both candle and the moth crazy around it. Rose and the nightingale lost in the fragrance. I am all orders of being, the circling galaxy. the evolutionary intelligence, the lift and the falling away. What is and what isn't. You who knew Jaludin, you the one in all. Say who I am, say I am you.
Beautiful. And Rumi is my favourite poet, so thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. I hadn't actually ever heard of him before I met you, so thank you too.
You're welcome, my darling. You're welcome. Thank you. That's really beautiful. I've got something to read, but I'll read it at the end. So if we wrap up, because it feels like no one's coming up to speak, we'll do our thank yous and, yeah, finish the call.
Yeah, we have had a request for next week. One of our long-time listeners, Pat, has asked us to do a topic on being stuck. So if anyone has questions for next week or any particular things you want us to discuss, then please send us a message during the week. We're looking forward to that. It's nice to have one in the book planned in advance, isn't it? Normally we just sort of work out either what people need or what we feel like.
Or
yeah,
we wing it.
or we wing it, and whatever's meant to be is meant to be, whatever comes up. But yeah, beautiful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you to Cult. Thank you to our sponsors, Vemp. You can check them out at vemp.xyz. And hope you have a really wonderful week and look forward to seeing you all this time next week for Stuck.
Yes, unstuck yourself. So I'm just going to say thank you as well. And please share the spaces. Please subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. Share. We know how important the message is to get out there. So, you're part of that. So please do that for us and for humanity, because there's nothing that could be better for everybody to hear as far as we're concerned. And we hope that you feel like that too. So what I'm going to read is something by a teacher called Jeff Foster. It's, I am divinity and I am a fucking mess. I am God and I'm a weird, original, flawed, unfinished painting of a human being. I have no limits, and so I limit myself in ingenious ways. I play with boundaries and edges, multiplicity and oneness, form and the formless. I love dancing in the in-between, bridging gaps, holding on and letting go. Grabbing and releasing, coming closer and moving away, only to come closer again. All movements are dear to me. I have no bias, no prejudice. I love the opening and the closing too, the space and the darkness. I am perfection and I love making the most ridiculous mistakes. I learn from all of it. I delight in it all. I am complete and I love the erotic ache of the unfinished and the unresolved too. You will never capture me, yet I am always present. I dance peacefully, restfully, on the edge of where the world comes into form. Will you join me there, my love?